Hello, Merry Christmas, welcome back to Oliver's greenhouse. Now I've come into my very, very humid greenhouse today just to check some stuff over. Check on the Bulbophyllum, Elizabeth and Buckleberry, which has got a beautiful flower spike on it. So I've got something in my eye. What is that? Ugh. That's gone. Anyway, so it's got 5 flowers which are developing on the spike, only 1 flower spike. I was kind of hoping that it would be out in bloom before Christmas, but it's not going to be. So I thought what I'd do is I'd bring you guys into the greenhouse and we'll have a look at exactly what's in flower. It's just going to be a mass update. So we'll have a look at some of the plants which are in bloom at the moment, talk about how much of a mess the greenhouse just seems to get itself into. Despite, you guys watch my videos, you know how regularly I like to clean the greenhouse, keep it nice and tidy. It's my zen space anyway, so the tidier it is, the happier I am. It just seems to get a mess really quickly this time of year. So there's like leaves and stuff sort of appearing all over the place. So we can have a chat about that. And I thought we'd have a look at some of the plants and do some updates. I thought we'd cover the rescue orchids, the cephalotus, and try and get all of that in as well. So plenty of time. And we're going to have some intermittent recording light today as well, because there's some sun out and about. But there's definitely it's definitely some scattered cloud as well, so the sun's going to keep going, coming and going, coming and going. So that's what the purpose of this video is, and have a chat about each plant as we go around, because there's some really interesting plants that are doing stuff at the moment. Mostly everything's in vegetative stage. It's very cool in the greenhouse here. I don't tend to provide much in the way of supplementary heating in winter here, only really at night. So during the daytime I rely heavily on purely solar gain to increase the temperature in the greenhouse. So it's only 16 degrees in here at the moment, which is perfectly fine. The heater's set to come on at 14 degrees, so at night it's not allowed to drop much lower than that. And to be honest, it doesn't take long when the sun's on, even though it's cold outside, for this box to heat up very, very quickly. So as a rule, I don't increase my temperature or provide any supplementary heating during the winter, during the day. And I've actually been looking at a few answers or possible options for improving my heat control for next year. So I've been looking at some heat source air pumps. So it's like an air conditioning unit which would sit outside the greenhouse, and you have what looks like a conditioning internal unit on the wall here. And what it does is it sort of works in the reverse way that a air conditioner works. So it takes heat from outside, puts it through a similar sort of process, and gives you a nice warm temperature inside the greenhouse. And they're supposed to be a lot more economical to run. So that's something I'm looking at the moment. I'm not sure whether it's going to be feasible, but we will be doing a little bit of exploration into that, because it could be, because they double as an air conditioner. So you can have one unit doing your heating in summer and also doing your cooling. So I think that's also going to help keep the humidity down. So I think that's something I'm going to look into, because they come up second hand on the internet every now and again. So, right, what I'll do is I'll grab you guys and we'll come down here and have a little look. I think what we'll do is we'll start with the Fora, which is in bloom, which is cool. So we'll have a quick look at that, and then we'll come round, have a look at the Nepenthes I repotted. We've got some nice new pictures and some new growth. We've got a Highland Truncata, which is doing some enormous leaf jumps. Then we'll come round to the Drosera regia, which was like one mega plant, and then I split it all up and turned it into lots of little plants, and they're growing like mad things. Then we'll have a look at the cephalotus. We'll come over here, talk about these Paphiopedilums. This is my big mother plant we split up, turned it into about 6 individuals. So I've got so many blooms of these guys. We're going to have a look at Paphiopedilum down here. Come over onto this side, talk about my Brassia Chieftain, which is just a flower machine. The Pluritalis is still in bloom, the Isabella is still in bloom, and we've got a few other bits and pieces, and we can have a look at the detritus, which just seems to collect from nowhere all along the benches. So I'll grab you guys and we'll have a look at this now. Okay, so excuse the horrifying backlighting, of which there is a plenty this time of year. The Fora pulchella flower spike has developed into a beautiful little white bell-shaped, it's a bit like a snowdrop flower. I'll zoom in so you guys can get a bit of a closer look at that. There we go, centre of shot. There we go. Beautiful. So here's the bloom here. You see it next to my hand, and it's sort of sequentially blooming. So this blooms out, And I'm assuming it's fully opened, although it may open a bit more yet. And there's another flower bud which is developing here. These guys look really good since I repotted them. There's lots of new growth, lots of new pictures appearing lower down, and they look fantastic with this backdrop of large orchid bark. See what I mean, with the green contrasting against the dark background. I'm not sure how that's going to affect the pH of the media they're growing in, but they seem to like it. There don't seem to be any signs of them not enjoying that. Over in this corner of the greenhouse, these are all my seed-grown Darlingtonia. These guys have just become a forest. I need to do something with them. I'm not sure what yet. Next year, like I said in previous videos, I'm going to be having a big clear out. So a lot of these guys are going to get divided up, and I'll keep one or two, but I'm basically going to sell all of those guys because they just take up too much room. They'd be much happier outside anyway in this weather. They really tolerate extremely cold weather. You can cover them with snow and they'll be absolutely fine. They don't like the heat, so they sort of really hated being in here during the summer this year because it was just so damn hot. Just a quick scan of my Pinguiculi. I divided up the Moctezuma cross Gigantea, and as a result I've ended up with absolutely loads of them. Morensis is still in bloom, lots of little flowers all over the place on this guy. It's an absolute flowering machine. And even my Tina looking a little bit sad over the back just over here, and a Jalmavensis which is starting to put up its year's flower spikes. Pick those guys up so we can have a look. There we go, you can see those flower spikes. There's even a little mushroom just there, a little toadstool. Nice pretty little purple flowers this guy produces. And they sit over in the corner here where it's a little bit cooler. There's some self-sown Drosera. They sort of appear everywhere. And now over to, oh, not you again. He just gets everywhere, this guy. Just go away. Stop judging me. There we go, that's better. This section of the bench is my Nepenthes collection. And as some of you have seen in some previous videos, I've been doing some repotting recently. So some of the bigger plants, I had to do something with my Lowii because they were just growing in all the other pots apart from the pots they were actually in. And this guy's growing really, really well. Some nice big leaf jumps on here. There's some new pictures emerging. Some existing pictures with the weird funny spikes underneath the lids. A weird white thing, not sure what that is. So yeah, these guys have grown really, they really enjoy the cooler temperatures. So seeing a real burst of growth from all of the Nepenthes at the moment. I've got a truncata, which is traditionally considered as a lowland or a lowland form. This one was sold as a highland form, being able to tolerate much cooler temperatures. And I'll tell you what, it is growing like an absolute machine. So we've got some nice pictures over here. This was the latest leaf jump. This was the previous one, this one here, and then since then it's done this. So yeah, really, this is definitely a highland form, considering it doesn't get above sort of 18 degrees at this sort of time of year in the greenhouse. It's putting on some enormous growth, huge leaf jumps, fantastic. We've got Nepenthes Raja, if I can get to it. It's only a little tiny seed-grown fella, just down here in my hand. Hope it's going to focus on it. There we go. Just nice little pictures on it. Really enjoying the cooler temperature. Growing really, really, really well. Fantastic little plant. It's one of those must-have species. My Paloenensis has also decided to kick off growing again. Another little seed-grown plant here. It's going to focus on it, or it's not going to focus on it. There we go. Beautiful. Lovely little plant. I've got Nepenthes Jam Bam, one of the latest pictures. It lost its lid, but produced a lovely little picture just here. It looks even more like, slightly less like a toilet. I guess it doesn't have a lid, but it's got that big wide peristome. Really nice colours as well. Beautiful little plant. That's one that's going to need some further staking next year because it grows quite quickly. What else have we got? I know what, I'll move you and we'll have a look. I'll tell you what, I can reach over the back. Nepenthes Hamata. This is a guy that I'm concerned about for the summer. The moss is, there is a Nepenthes in here. You can see a little picture just there. I might zoom in so you get a better idea because it's hiding, starting to get smothered by the sphagnum here. So Going to need to do some pruning to get some of this back, but there is a Nepenthes hamata in here. You can see there's a picture hiding there, one over the back, and then just tons and tons and tons of moss. So yeah, that's what I'm concerned about for the summer, because most of my plants will tolerate some warmth, but that guy will probably dislike it immediately and make it very apparent by slowing down growth. Here are the big Nepenthes. This is the so-called Tobica, which I'm pretty sure isn't a Tobica, because the pictures are completely the wrong colour and kind of the wrong shape. So this guy we repotted, and it's producing lots of new pictures from the basal rosette over here, and it's continuing to climb upwards, picturing very regularly. Nepenthes fusca, which was kind of sucking, it was really hating life because it got super warm in here this year. It's produced a couple of nice new pictures. There's another one coming along over the other side here as well, just there. So I'm very glad that that guy's doing so well. Here's a plant I particularly love. It's not the biggest by any stretch of the imagination. It's certainly not even a big growing or large growing. It doesn't produce large pictures. But this is Nepenthes Glabrata, and it produces just the prettiest twee little pictures. I must say my camera has been very slow at focusing. It might be the light, I think, in here, but it produces these twee little pictures. These are about as big as they get. They won't get much larger than this. Stunning little plant. Grows really, really happily in the greenhouse. Nepenthes Gymnast. This guy's growing very well. There's a dead picture and he's snipping off. Has got one big picture, but it kind of got squashed between some of the staging, so it's a bit of an odd shape. But it's got these pretty little purple dots inside the throat of the picture there. And that guy also grows great guns in the greenhouse. It's obviously nice and cool in here, and it's very happy with those conditions, so growing fantastically well. So over the back here, we've got these are the divisions of my Drosera regia. I divided them completely the wrong time of year because I divided them and it got really, really, really hot, and they all went, oh my God, what's happening to me? Since then, they've been doing lots of growth and feeding them with fish food flakes because they're not going to get any food in here really. And they've put on a real burst of growth since starting to feed them on a more regular basis. That one didn't make it, that one just disappeared. There's some large ones over the side here. They'll perk up as soon as spring arrives. Down here we've got some seed grown ones. This one here is seed grown. That one is not doing very well. This guy here is also one of the seed grown ones, and there's one over in the pot here. As most people predict, my success and germination rate was very high. When they go through the awkward stage between moving away from juvenile roots to adult roots is when most of the losses appear to occur, which is unfortunate. Cephalotus hummers giant. These guys, well, they're not giant at the moment, they're only very, very twee, but these were leaf pulling sent to me by Mark Anderson. Thank you very much, Mark. These guys have been doing really well. No signs of horrible mold on them, so that's a real bonus. There's even a cheeky Nepenthes mirror, which is growing very happily down here. Unfortunately sat in a little bit of water there. Doesn't seem to make too much of a difference at this stage, although I let this tray dry out completely before re-watering it, and I always water these plants on the bottom anyway. So the rest of the cephalotus that I treated, there was some there sent to a shop. These guys here got hit with the fungus fight. There's no signs of fungus anymore on these guys. There's no signs of fungus anymore on my big cephalotus plants over here as well. In fact, the fungus is completely gone on all of the cephalotus now. I can't find any more signs of it. I find the odd dead picture, but there's no signs of the actual fungus growing on it anymore. So, and they're producing loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of growth. For goodness sake, stop judging me! Chuck him over there. There we go. It says I'm on the naughty list and that Krampus is coming for me this year. Which, if you don't know who Krampus is, it's a European. It's basically the alternative to Father Christmas. Google him, find out. Okay, so on to the rescue orchids. This is one of the Brassias we rescued. It's one of the, it was like £1 orchid. It's got this really weird spotty mottling that looks like a virus. As the leaves emerge, they are free of the spotting, and then over a short period of time they become really, really spotty. It doesn't happen to have spread to any of my other plants. I don't know what causes it. It could be a virus, although it's flowering. It's putting up some lovely flower spikes here and and here. It's unusual, it could be a virus. Like I said, the new growth seems to be free of it, although it has like a dark green mottling in the leaves themselves. So keep an eye on that one. It sort of stays down under the bench, away from most of the rest of the plants anyway. But it's come on a long way considering how rubbish it was when we first purchased it. It's probably a due a repot now, so it's probably not far away from time to hook it out of there and put it in some fresh media. Another one of the rescue orchids here. This guy was so close to death. It's a miracle it survived. But it's put on some nice new growth. It actually flowered this year twice for me, which was unusual. So it's moving away from those horrible sunken, nasty looking pseudo bulbs like this. And it's getting some nice, fresh, fully hydrated, plump ones. So it's looking a lot better. There's another new growth down here. But this guy still looks a bit ropey, and it looks better than when it was when I bought it. It was basically on the brink of collapse. And the last rescue orchid grows up at the back here. And I thought I'd lost this guy. I wasn't particularly fussed as to whether or not I did lose it. It's some sort of like extremely generic, relatively unremarkable dendrobium. So it was like Dendrobium cyanix. So I just literally put it on a pad of moss and let it dry out in between waterings. And it's put on some new growths. One of these side growths with these aerial roots. It's pretty hideous, to be entirely honest. It was just an experiment to see if you can save orchids which are that close to being dead. And well, yeah, you can, but as long as you don't mind putting up with horrifying aesthetics. Okay, so a few dead leaves that need snipping off. This is Paphiopedilum cardinale, or cardinal, and it's being a Paphiopedilum. It's growing great guns, loads of new rosettes appearing, a few dead leaves that need snipping off. Blooming constantly. Once it started to produce flower spikes, it just didn't stop, so it flowers basically all the time. There's another new flower spike over on this side, but it's huge. It's taking up an enormous amount of room, and it's still only really a baby, so this thing's going to get colossal. It would divide beautifully at the moment. There's like a natural gap in the rhizome between the flushes of growth, so that's something I'll probably divide in the new year, and that can go to someone else who wants it as well. Okay, so here's one of the divisions of Paphiopedilum Jersey freckles. You can see how big these blooms are. This was my massive mother plant. This sat in the house, at the old house, for years and years and years. Grew to an enormous size, and then one year it produced 8 flower spikes, and Harry picked pretty much all of the flower spikes and buds off of it before it had a chance to open, which infuriated me massively. So since then it hadn't flowered quite as much, so I divided it up. I've got 4 of these, about the same sort of size, and I divided it up, potted them up, pop them down. They live underneath the bench where there's moderate light, and they've just taken off this year. So I've got loads and loads and loads of these blooms dotted all over the greenhouse at the moment, which is no bad thing, because I've got another one over here as well, slightly larger plant. This will probably be the one. This will probably be the one I keep out of the 4. Because it's got a few more growths on it and stuff. So, and this was just a purchase from a normal garden centre about 9 or 10 years ago, and I've had it ever since. Really, it's fantastic, very reliable bloomer. Okay, so here's a plant we don't usually see on Oliver's greenhouses because it lives under the benches. This is Drosera schizandra, quite a difficult to grow species. This guy grows in the almost, I wouldn't say it's more than shade, it's like almost darkness underneath the benches where it's always cool, and it's grown beautifully. It's grown really, really well. Got some nice big leaves on it, very, very dewy, really dewy. But I hardly ever bring it out, so it's hardly ever seen any of the videos, but it's growing really well along with all the sphagnum moss, which has colonised the media around it as well. So yeah, an unusual species, and not one we see very often. Right, I'm going to try and move this monster. This is Brassia Chieftain, and this thing I've had, it's one of the first orchids I ever bought, and it's featured heavily in a lot of my videos. This thing's an absolute machine. So it's got some flowers here which are just on the edge of tipping over. I'll turn the camera towards me, but you can see how big this plant gets. It's an absolute monstrosity. And a few people have got divisions, a few people amongst the community have got divisions of this plant, because I do tend to divide it once every couple of years because it just grows so rapidly. pick a few dead leaves off. Loads and loads of new roots. It's just an absolute machine. I've never had a plant like it. It's got lots of new flower spikes. There's one by my head here, another 2 around this side, and one which is kind of developing over here. So I love this plant, but god damn does it take a lot of room. It just takes over everything. So it's a real pain in the backside accommodating it within the greenhouse. Nice plant, just way too big. Just way too big. There's my Dracula orchid, growing really well, loving the cool weather. No signs of a flower spike yet. What else have we got over here that we're going to have a look at? Gongura Galeota. This guy struggled along for ages, and then I repotted it this year and it just bloomed and bloomed and bloomed. That's enjoying the sort of cool weather. Well, it seems to enjoy the cool weather. Like I said, it doesn't get very warm in here, so most of the plants, it's one of those, it's do or die. You either sink or you swim. It's one of those here. Okay, so I'll give all of you guys in my community, other growers amongst the YouTube orchid community, to see if you can outgrow a Dendrobium Devanionum. If you can produce one that has a pseudobulb or cane longer than mine, then I take my hat off to you, because mine has got to be almost as long as I am tall. It is ridiculous. Look at that for a cane. It's longer than my arms are. Absolutely huge, enormous. It's got to be, it's pushing 2 meters, I reckon that is. It's absolutely colossal. So if you can grow one longer than that, I would love to see it. And that just tucks in down there. Coleogynia fimbriata, just finishing up blooming for the year. It's been a real stalwart this year. It's been fantastic. Has some lovely blooms on it. They're also sequential as well, and now lots of new growth is coming through. This is one of those ones that sort of plugged along. I just didn't have the growth right on it, so I didn't have the conditions. I wasn't suiting its needs, so I thought, sod it. What I'll do is I'll put it in one of these trays and see how it gets on. Since then, it's just absolutely taken off. It's another one of those orchids which I'm struggling to accommodate. So I've got a lovely, I consider my collection to be interesting, diverse, but I think my species selection might be a little bit, considering the size of my grow space, I think my species selection could be better, because I'm attracted to a lot of large bulbophyllums as well, and they just take up so much room. It's just colossal. Pluritalis Restrepoioides, still in full flower. This guy was up on my Instagram the other day. It's produced an enormous number of beautiful blooms, and it looks stunning. Really nice plant. And I was surprised by the longevity of the blooms. Usually they don't last that long. You can expect them to be on there for about a week before they drop off. Not at all the case with this guy. They seem to stay on there. Really, this has been in bloom for 3 weeks, something like that. Warranted the blooms are coming towards their ends, but yeah, very surprising for a Pluritalis. Like I say, from my experience, the blooms never last that long. So that's pretty much it for in the greenhouse at the moment that's interesting and in flower. I've got an enormous, my Nepenthes ventrata I need to do something with, and I can't work out what it is I'm going to do with it just yet. It's growing into all of my, snap that off of there, growing into all of my Dixonia, because it's become a monster. And I don't know what on earth I'm going to do with it. I guess I need to divide it, but what do you do with something like this? Ideas in the comment section down below. This thing's huge. I need to do something with it. I just don't know what that is yet. Oh. Okay, so on a completely different note, a non-orchid, non-carnivorous plant subject. This is a Bromeliad that I bought for, like, it was in the reduced, these are always in the reduced section because they produce these not particularly attractive large red flower things, inflorescence at the top of them, and then they basically die. So if they're not sold whilst they're like this, they basically go on a shelf, they don't get watered, and then they die. And so I spotted this guy there, and I was like, you know what, let's give it a go, because I'm not growing. I've only got Bromeliad reducta over the back there, so I don't really grow too many Bromeliads. So I thought, you know, let's save it before it dies. So the mother plant will die off gradually now, and what it does is it produces loads of little pups, little sucker growth from around the base here, and it's these guys that you can take off once they're a little bit more mature than this and pot up, and so the sequence keeps going. So I thought I'd get a few of these, and if I could grow them around the back of the greenhouse, they'll help with the humidity, because obviously they keep a lot of water in the crown of the plant. So I thought it might help with humidity. So yeah, I have very limited knowledge with Bromeliads, but I thought that would be an interesting challenge. So, and obviously pretty easy to keep because they sell them in the greenhouse, in the local garden centres and stuff like that. So that's that plant there. We've got some new buds appearing on the Psychopsis. Just a quick reminder, when your Psychopsis finishes flowering, please do not cut the flower spikes off because they're sequential, and you'll remove the unformed buds which are inevitably going to emerge. So okay, so I thought I'd end this video looking at a little plant that we don't really look at very often because it sort of grows away over the back in an unusual sprawling manner. So this is Dicea tenuis. This is one of the plants I bought from Equigenera, one of the successful stories. The others not so great, but these guys seem to be quite tolerant of disturbance and being dried out momentarily until I got them home and had a chance to actually pot them up. These guys grow really, really well, and they've got this fantastically tactile foliage. I really love them, and they flower almost constantly. It's actually a miracle they're not in bloom at the moment, because there's always one or two flowers. They don't produce an abundance of blooms, but there's always one or two flowers which you have to sort of like peer through the foliage to find, and then they're very, very pretty. Lots of like light greens and creams and purpley sort of coloured spots, and also interestingly coloured lips to the flowers as well. So yeah, really, really pretty little plant. I love it. I love this sort of thing. It's very unusual. It doesn't look like an orchid. Like an orchid doesn't look like an orchid. So and it also, yeah, it's producing some aerial roots as well. So I wonder if there's potential for a removal of kikis from a plant like this. We'll have to wait and see, but that's something I'll look into with it. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, there was absolutely no plan for today's video whatsoever. I just wanted to get out in the greenhouse and have a little look around, sort some stuff out, and thought, why not bring you guys along to have a look at some of my plants whilst we're out here and how they're doing. As for the mess, everything's just, well, I find it infuriating that this many plants can make this much mess so very, very quickly. Well, I don't suppose there's a great deal I can do about it until spring arrives and the weather outside is mild enough for me to ship everything back outside and have a good clean up. I want to bleach stuff. I want to put Jay's fluid on the floor. I want to have a good clear up, you know, and there's just no way, no point doing it at the moment. It's too cold and miserable, and I haven't got the time for it. So thanks for coming along. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I had a quick look at some of the plants which have featured throughout 2018, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave us with a little bit of a flashback at some, tell a lie. I'm going to leave this video with a bit of a look back at 2018, some of the videos and some of the plants that have featured heavily, and stay tuned, because when this guy here eventually matures, we're going to have the first blooming of Bulbophyllum, Elizabeth and Buckleberry in the greenhouse. I've had this plant forever and it just refused to bloom, but this year it has produced its first flower spike. So although these are quite common in cultivation, this will be the first time bloomer for the greenhouse, and as soon as it does, you can bet your bottom dollar it will be going up on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and enjoy the brief reflection on 2018 coming up. Hello, 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 good morning. Hello, 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 hello. So the next plant, this is the next plant along, this is, and it's heavily inundated the mount it's on, so we're going to be discussing. Okay, so I was going to use a broom for this, but it's somewhere in the snow. I have no idea where it is. So Sunday, video making day, video making day. Woo-wee! Let's plant an orchid on a rock. beautiful Sarracenia Varmorii. If I look at the colour in that, absolutely. Okay, so if any of you guys are interested in how to do this using a butler sink, you have to let go of the trees once he's got them. This is my main Nepenthes growing area. Some more different glass, so as you can see that weird little character. Okay, so here we have the little plant in front of you here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,